Welcome to Trusting After Trauma, Season 7, Thriving Beyond Narcissistic Childhood Abuse. I'm your host, Pi Venus Winslow. Our goal is to provide information and resources to educate and empower viewers to recover from childhood trauma and narcissistic abuse so they can reclaim their health, happiness, and personal power. Our speakers specialize in supporting others through their unique expertise and offer valuable insights, tools, and inspiration for viewers to find the courage and motivation to change their lives. I'm thrilled to have Dr. Meg Haworth back with us for this summit today. So, transpersonal psychologist, holistic nutritional chef, and best-selling author, Dr. Meg Haworth helps survivors of parental narcissistic abuse go from wounded ACON, adult children of narcissists, to healed ICON, independent, confident, original, and naturally you, in her one-on-one therapy practice, her online courses, and her YouTube channel. She offers holistic solutions, including her whole person integration technique to release the emotional energy and core negative beliefs held in the body from abuse, and certifies practitioners in her technique while assisting them to reduce empathy overload through a unique intuitive development method. As a former private chef to celebrities, she also offers nutrition and cooking to support the body and heal itself. With nearly 3 decades of experience, she has helped thousands of people heal holistically. She's been featured on NBC Nightly News, Fox 11 LA, and the Los Angeles Times. As a survivor of narcissistic abuse, a dozen illnesses, and being struck by lightning, Dr. Meg knows what it takes to overcome life's biggest challenges and loves to help others do the same. Welcome back, Dr. Meg.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's always great to talk to you.
Oh, I'm so glad you're joining us again. So, narcissistic abuse. I just want to start, let's just start with talking a little bit about narcissistic abuse and how it impacts children, especially people who grow up in a family with a narcissist. And tell us about how people can figure out or learn more about how that has impacted them.
Yeah, I think, it's looking at all of the different wounds that narcissism, especially parental narcissistic abuse, creates in us. And some of the biggest are, well, so the 5 primary wounds of parental narcissistic abuse that I talk about in my online course. Self-esteem, big one. Of course, a lot of parenting styles really kind of diminish our self-esteem, a lot of life experiences and all of that. But it's more insidious than that. As you know, we've both been through it. To have a narcissistic parent, because of that constant, you don't ever measure up, you're never going to be good enough, you're never going to get it right. There's no like moments where you do. So it really diminishes self. And then, as I say, we're ACONs, we've been conned. We've been conned into believing all these things are just not true. And that's, a huge part of growing up with narcissistic abuse in your background like this. And then, of course, self-expression is a huge one, because you're not important in these kinds of family systems. You're supposed to be serving the narcissistic parent all the time. Everybody has to focus on them. And so you're not getting that nurturing parent who's saying, oh, you're so great at that, let's bring it out. Unless of course it benefits the narcissistic parent, and then they'll take all the credit for, what a great singer you are, or what a great, but it has to be something they approve of. If they don't approve of singing, then, well, that's terrible. You can't be one. So there's just so many different areas of our lives that it affects. Of course, it affects our relationships and the way we show up in our relationships. And it also affects the physical body and how illness can be created in the physical body over time. These stress-related illnesses is what they refer to them, but they're really emotional-based illness from emotional abuse.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah. Do you think that ACEs, there's an ACEs quiz that I believe you have on
Mhm.
your website. Do you think that can also kind of help people understand a little more about how their childhood experiences impacted them?
Yeah, absolutely. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Study is the largest public health study ever done. It was done at Kaiser Permanente in San Diego. It's still ongoing since the mid 90s. 17,000 people they've been tracking. So it's a huge number of people. And then they've done copycat studies all over the world that have come up with the same result. So what happens to you prior of the age of 18 will affect you later in life. And the higher your ACE score is, there's 10 points on the score, the more likely you are to contract these illnesses earlier and literally take decades off of your life. From illnesses like the top one is lung diseases and cancer. And lungs in Chinese medicine are the seat of grief, and the amount of grief that you go through. And I have clients all the time, I'm sure you do too, where they don't even recognize, oh my God, I'm in total grief. I had no idea. The grief, the depression, the brain fog, the sort of like you're walking through this surreal kind of cloud in your life. So much of that is coming from those experiences as a child. And so they can affect the lungs. They can affect cancer is, I see it a lot in my practice where it's connected to long-held resentments. And that's something that we have no place to put all this anger that's being shot at us, and then the anger that we're trying to suppress because it's not appropriate for us. If we do get angry and get engaged in the arguments with the narcissistic parent, which is they love it, then you're just giving them supply and you're getting weaker and weaker and weaker, which is why they do it,
Yeah.
you know.
Wow. So, so you've created this whole person integration technique. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so whole person integration technique is an emotional release technique. It's somatic in nature. So it looks really at the holistic system, mental, emotional, energetic, and physical, because they're all connected and you get to see simultaneously the way that emotions, thoughts, feelings, and beliefs have impacted you over time, especially from your childhood. Because, those things that happen, the constant programming of making you feel essentially worthless, making you feel like you're unlovable, all of those things get lodged in your energy system and thus in your body. And I think, honestly, I think that the energy system is the most important system that we have and the most neglected. We're not really paying a lot of attention to it because people don't really know what it is. And that's where everything sort of stops and starts. It comes through that energy field as that emotional energy. And then boom, you're holding it in your heart. And then over time, I am unlovable is in there. That emotional energy of hurt or anger or sorrow is or grief
Mhm.
is spinning in there, and it just keeps gaining more energy and speed. And as that happens, you get drained. And through that draining process, you can get sick.
Mhm.
So because you don't have enough energy to run your biology.
Mhm.
And like I said, those emotions, those negative emotions have the biggest impact, but positive emotions also do too. And that's a big, big part of the technique is
Mhm.
releasing the energy. It's sort of like deleting an old app and bringing in a new one or bringing in the one we want to feel, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. Do you think that that old program, like tell us more about how like the thoughts and beliefs and emotions that how those that influences our behavior, and possibly like do you think it reinforces trauma?
The holding on to those thoughts, feelings, and beliefs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
running in that program, because I think a lot of people, and this is myself included, like I didn't realize that I was perpetuating my own illness, like my
Yeah.
own trauma. Like, and I think, I would say I was re-traumatizing myself over and over and over again because
Yes.
of my repetitive thinking patterns and my
Mhm.
beliefs, and then and then how that created that emotional experience for me.
Right. Because all of those things create your perception, and you're looking out at the world through this perception that was shaped by a really sick person or people. Sometimes it's more than one narcissistic parent, or you've got aunts and uncles and grandparents that, there are a lot of them in these family systems often. And so your perception gets shaped by those thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and the programming. And so, yes, it is up to us to release ourselves from the program, and for us to also look at, what are the things that I'm doing? What are the behaviors I'm repeating, just quite unconsciously, that are manipulative tactics that your narcissistic parent used? It's a really important part of the process, is to be able to look at yourself and go, oh, I do that icky manipulative thing that they did. And then to make your own changes. That's part of the process. As you release that emotional energy from the field, it becomes easier and easier because your perception shifts so dramatically. There's something really powerful about being able to see the emotion and how it's been playing out in your life, and how it's created those emotional patterns, and how it's affected you physically, mentally, emotionally, and energetically. And
Mhm.
then how, when you change that, when you release the old pattern, you release the old way of thinking, you understand, you bring what was in the unconscious to the conscious, which sometimes that's all it takes. As soon as you see it, you're like, oh, I'm done. That's gone. You know, I love those aha moments. They're really, because you can feel them, they're visceral, because it's energy lifting from you, you
Yeah,
know?
I've had that experience too, and I've also experienced, and I actually was meeting with a group of people last night, and uh, we were talking about how noticing those patterns in ourselves, like how we've been manipulative, or how we've taken on some of our narcissistic parents' traits, behaviors,
Mhm.
and then that those feelings of shame and like horror, like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, and am I the narcissist? And I've had so many people ask me that too. It's like, well, I can see how I'm like my narcissistic parent. Does that mean I'm a narcissist too? What
Yeah.
what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think every single client questions that about themselves. And if you're able to see yourself clearly enough to be able to question that and then to see your answers, then I'm thinking no, because a narcissist is not able to see themselves. They refuse to look at themselves, to make changes, because they've created that fantasy world that I'm perfect, there's nothing wrong with me, it's always you. And that's a big part of that confusion, why we start thinking we're narcissistic, or we're narcissists also, is because those tables have been constantly turned on us. We're so used to taking on the blame, the
Mhm.
shame, the guilt, all of those things that have been really just hurled at us on a daily basis. And so it's the smoke and mirrors aspect is so confusing when it comes to narcissism. So I do say to my clients, like, you're here, you're showing up, you're doing this work. I've seen you be self-reflected. I've seen you change. Um, and, but I think it is a good thing to question in yourself, because it does lead you to those questions like, well, what are the behaviors I'm repeating? Because, you know, you don't want to do that. Nobody wants to do that. And I think it's really easy to say, I'm nothing like my narcissistic parent. I remember thinking that. I'm like, well, you know what? I was.
Yeah.
And I still will see things in myself that I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, that's that's so him. But then I'll go back to the person and apologize or say, the way I just did that was kind of manipulative and I'm sorry, you know? And it feels really good to have those conversations with healthy people that can have them, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think it's also, I mean, it's empowering because, well, for one, you can give yourself permission to make mistakes, like
Mhm.
because everybody backslides when they're working on changing behaviors, especially behaviors of a lifetime. So you can give
Yeah,
yourself some slack there. And also you're demonstrating personal responsibility. So
exactly.
you're owning it, which means you're taking you're taking that power right there. And then you can choose, like you said, you could choose to apologize, you can make amends, and that can deepen your relationship with other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back and talk a little more about your personal or your whole person integration technique.
Mhm.
How does that help to release that root cause of trauma and illness in the body?
Yeah, so again, it helps you with that holistic perspective and understanding of, and let me just kind of give you an example of what it would be like if when somebody comes to me and say they are working with anger.
Mhm,
And because, they get triggered into anger or they're people pleasers and they're angry all the time and they don't even realize it. And now they're realizing, like, oh my gosh, I am really angry. This people pleasing is driven by that, because I feel like I can't speak up. I can't say what I really feel. I can't be authentic. So they come to me, and that might be the story that they're really living.
mhm,
And so now we do the technique, their eyes are closed, so they have reference to their subconscious mind and can see pictures and images and feelings and things. And you can feel your body more when your eyes are closed. And then we would work with that anger. And where do you feel it in your body?
mhm,
And then they'll say, oh, it's in my stomach. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. That's your center of personal power. This is the center that I see every narcissistic parent hooks into, and it's the first one I help people clear because that center of personal power is where you build your energies around self-confidence, around self-love, around self-respect, and all of those things get wildly diminished by this experience. So
mhm,
back to the technique. Um, so we see the anger and we see, like, oh, now I have my stomach right now is burning. Oh, and I have ulcers. Oh, so you start to see how the anger, which they know scientifically from the study of psychoneuroimmunology, mind body medicine, that emotions have chemicals. And when you release that emotion into your body, every single cell of your body registers that emotion. So if you think about if you're angry every single day for years on end, what that does to the body, like that's like mind blowing when you think about it. So of
mhm,
course your biology is going to be drained by that anger. We've got the chemical understanding of what's happening there.
mhm,
So when they start to see these connections, and then we start to talk to the emotion itself. So we're stepping outside of the story and we're looking at the story of the emotion. And the emotion, I'll say, what does it look like? And that image can come up, and that image sometimes is a cartoon character, which immediately takes the edge off. I like to use Tasmanian devil. I saw that so many times when I was doing this work on myself, when I was first learning about it uh, so, you see the Tasmanian devil spinning in there, and you think about somebody who's got a lot of energy. And,
mhm,
but then there's this sort of funny aspect to it that sort of makes me go, oh, okay, there's another layer to this. It's not, not that we're gonna diminish the seriousness of what happened, but it does help you see it in a different light.
Mhm.
And then we work with like, well, what is it thinking? What is it feeling? We want to know what is its whole story. And as we get deeper into all of the emotions it's holding, because anger is usually a mask for a lot more. It's a mask for a lot of sorrow, typically, a
Mhm.
lot of sadness in there and grief. And
Mhm.
it's a way to try to protect yourself from the sadness and grief, but you can't. You may have needed that when you were a kid, but now that you're an adult, you don't need that anymore.
Mhm.
Hopefully you're not in another narcissistically abusive relationship, but even so, even if you were, to be able to release that anger is so powerful, and to understand what is the core limiting belief that it's holding.
Mhm.
And so then we do this whole process with that to help with the release, to help with coursing the energy through your body that you want to feel. You want to feel the peace. Okay, let's get that peace moving through you. And then that's the prescription
Mhm.
is afterwards. And that's part of the reinforcement process is that peace, and just letting it flood your body and your energy field and walk with you and grow with you and learn. And so
Mhm.
you learn about peace. And I'll say to people like, go learn about peace, go Google it, go read every book you can, and know that when you sign up for a class on peace in an earth school, that you're going to be challenged to see what peace isn't, because
Mhm.
that's part of the whole process,
Yeah,
what it is and what it isn't.
absolutely. That contrast is really important.
It really is. It's actually helpful and
Mhm.
needed.
Yeah, yeah. So your example, you were talking about the stomach. You were talking about that area of our body. And you're nutrition, uh, you've been a nutritional chef for
Yeah.
celebrities. So you've got a unique perspective and expertise around food. So
Mhm.
how can food help us heal and detox?
Oh my gosh, food is so important for many reasons. And one of the first ones I'm going to mention is that there's a whole class of foods called anxiogenic foods, or foods that make us anxious because of how they're farmed, and which means there's tons of poisons in them and food chemicals. So like red dyes, I mean, there's just so many things in our food supply. MSG, which actually makes brain cells explode. It's called an excitotoxin. And it's in so many things under a lot of different names. So, like maltodextrin, or, there's just tons and tons of names that they put on these packages. So, when you start to eliminate those food chemicals, you're making everything easier on your body because you're releasing things that in the environment, the food that can make you anxious, food
Mhm.
that can make you depressed.
Mhm.
It's like we know this in this country. There's a lot of information out there about how food makes you feel. And so eliminating those foods from your world, and the simplest way to do that is just eat real food. Eat real food. And food companies have taken us so far away from eating real food. If a corporation is cooking for you, you are more than likely going to be sick. You're going to be depressed. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be emotional. So, but when you get the right foods into your body, those will support the body to heal itself because food has energy and it has vibration just like you do.
Mhm.
And so if you think about toxic thinking, toxic emotions, negative emotions, and you think about toxic foods and like you're going to be attracted to toxic foods when you're in toxic thinking. But
Mhm.
as that clears, it's easier to make the choices with the food. It's easier to make the choices that are empowering to you.
Mhm.
And then you feel better and better and better as you help yourself heal holistically,
Mhm.
with food.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What you just shared right now, I had a little light bulb go off in my head about that. Because I know, and I would say for like our listeners and viewers, like you can try this at home, right? Like eliminate
Mhm.
something from your diet that you know isn't good for you and see how you feel. Because I know for myself, sugar and processed flour make me more anxious. And I
Mhm.
have seen this in myself. When I eliminate it from my diet, I feel less anxious or stressed. I don't worry about little things at all, really.
Yeah.
And then if I get into, and I say I get into sugar or flour, like I go out
Mhm.
to eat and I decide, oh, I'm gonna splurge a little bit, and then I get off track for a couple of days. I notice I start getting more anxious. I start worrying. I feel unsettled. And then I ask myself, what's different? And then I go, oh, I'm eating flour and I'm eating sugar. And as soon as I eliminate that, I go back to feeling better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know that's real.
Yeah.
But
And
what you said that made my ping go off is like when I get upset and I slip back into my old thinking, what's the first thing I want? Sugar and flour.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's something that you could start to become aware of in your own world. It's like, well, when I get upset, I get angry, what do I do? What do I think? Oh, I really want a glass of wine, or I really want some sugar, or I really want those Doritos, which are full of chemicals. Like, they're so delicious, but there's a swap. And that's really important to know. Like, you can go to Whole Foods and get their non-toxic Doritos, and you probably won't have the same result. Maybe you will if the problem is corn, but so, and that's really the feedback that the body gives you.
Mm-hmm.
um like, your body was given the feedback that, like, if I ate that piece of cake or whatever it was you had, it's probably a dessert of some sort. Like, who doesn't want to have dessert, right? And it doesn't mean you shouldn't ever, let's totally eliminate it, let's keep it out of your life forever. I mean, I'll eat a gluten-free, dairy-free cake because I cannot do gluten or dairy. They're so toxic to my system. And it's really determining what are the things that are toxic to your system, and how do you need to be able to eat to be able to really um, feel empowered. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I had my best friend's mom made a pan of brownies for me. And this has probably been like 8 years ago. And just as a thank you. And they were so delicious. And over the course of a few days, I ate them all. This is a small pan, but oh my God, they were so good. I had the worst crying jags. I had rage fits, like road rage. I had depression. I had extreme fatigue. Like, this is how intense food can be. And if you're in that, like, talk about food coma, if you're in that all the time and you don't even know how these foods are affecting you, um, to start learning about, like, what are the top anxiogenic foods. And I'll just tell you real quickly, it's gluten, dairy, corn, soy. Now, those crops are all poisoned dramatically in the United States. You might be able to eat just fine in Europe without any problem, but here you might have a lot of trouble. So, um, and that's really kind of the bottom line with those foods. So get the organic ones, certified organic, if you want to try to experiment, and then just start listening to your body, like, how does it react when you do reintroduce the food? And you have to be really, when you go through the whole process, you do have to be really strict about it. Like, that means no butter, no cheese, no milk in your coffee. But there, again, there's swaps for just about everything that
Mm-hmm.
are pretty darn good these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Such a great conversation today. I love our conversations, and you've got so much to share with people who are struggling with recovery around narcissistic abuse. And there's just so many different avenues to look at and things to keep in mind on this healing journey. And I know, you're on your healing journey. I'm on mine. Our viewers are on theirs, and like you said, it is up to us to start looking at our patterns and start looking where we can change, we can make changes that are going to really have an impact on our healing and our health.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think it's important to look at it holistically.
Mhm,
And holistic does mean mental, emotional, physical, energetic, and spiritual.
mhm.
Like all of those things together, because it's all one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So you got a free gift to offer our viewers. So will you tell us about that?
Yeah. So on my website, there's actually a number of free gifts, but 52 ways to tell if your parent is a narcissist is up there on the website. And it's a checklist of 52 ways. And then it also kind of lets you like measure or see, how extreme was the abuse. It helps you kind of understand. I think one of the things that we learn when we go through like all the videos and the courses and all the things that we do to try to determine, wait, what? They're a narcissist? Like it's hard to get through to yourself because you've been lied to and blame shifted and all this stuff for so long. And they feel, you know what I mean? I think it's always good to have that checklist,
Mhm,
to keep reminding yourself, this happened. This was the truth. This was the reality you went through, you
mhm.
know, and this is what I have to work with. So there's that. Yeah. And then there's the ACE quiz, I have a free ebook and a recipe book as well.
Wow, lots of
Yeah.
goodies.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Meg, for your generosity, these valuable gifts and, everything you've shared today, your expertise. And I just really, really appreciate you being here with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And I also want to thank all of our viewers and everybody who's joining us for Trusting After Trauma Season 7. We hope that you enjoy this journey with our experts on how we can recover from parental narcissistic abuse and heal our body, mind, and spirit to live joyful, authentic lives.